We are playing our very first session of the vlog. It is February 10th, 2024. We are playing at the Hard Rock Hotel Casino in Tampa, Florida. Jumping straight into the action. The stakes are 2-5 no limit. We are buying for the max, 1.5K. Let's go. The very first hand, we pick up pocket kings. In this hand, the middle position player opened to $25. The low jack and high jack both call. We decide to raise here to $135. So I typically raise in position anywhere between 3 to 3.5 times the raise amount. Out of position, usually 4.5 to 5 times the raise amount. The flop comes out King, Jack 7. We flop top set. Life is good. We decide to go ahead and down bet when it's checked around to us. The middle position player immediately moves all in and the low jack folds. So obviously we snap call here with the nuts. The board runs out clean and we double up and we win our first pot of the vlog. The very next shuffle, we pick up pocket tens in the low jack. A middle position player opens to 25. There are a couple callers in between. We end up going 5-way with the pot being $125. The flop comes out 9-9-4 with 2 clubs. It checks around on the flop. The turn is a 6. We decide to bet about 1/3 and we take it down. So far in the session, we have a pretty good image, a winning image that is, and a pretty tight image as well. We haven't shown down any bluffs. A middle position player looks like a solid pro based on the few hands he played so far, opens to 25. We are on the button with pocket 8s and we elect to call. The flop comes down 10-10 deuce with 2 diamonds. Our opponent decides to c-bet $25 and we decide to call. The turn is a 9 of clubs, giving us an open-ended straight draw. Our opponent decides to check. We decide to size up here to $80 to put pressure on a weak 10 or just take down the pot right away with equity. We don't want to get floated here with overcards, so I think this bet accomplishes exactly that. Our opponent decides to call. The river is the 3 of spades, and our opponent decides to check. So we have a few options here. We definitely have some showdown value. We could overbet the pot here to get a hand like ace 10 or king 10 or jack 10 or queen 10 to fold. I think we have enough showdown value here to not turn our hand into a bluff. I expect our opponent to have diamonds here a lot of the times, so we decide to check it back, and our opponent indeed does have diamonds, but he has king 10 of diamonds, so we lose this one. Next hand, we pick up pocket queens in middle position. We open to 15. The blinds defend, and we see a flop of ace 9-3 with 2 clubs. We decide to bet 1/3 pot, 15, and the small blind immediately moves all in. So we're done with this hand. Next hand we pick up is ace queen off in the cutoff. We decide to open to 15. The button calls and we go heads up to a flop. The flop comes 10-6 deuce rainbow. We decide to bet 15 here. We're looking for good turn cards. Any turn card that is above a 10 would give us additional equity, and we would fire 2/3 to a pot size bet, potentially maybe even a overbet in some circumstances. Instead, the turn is the 7 of hearts. We decide to check and we fold to our opponent's bet. This next hand, we pick up ace 10 of clubs, under the gun +1. The under the gun opponent limps for 5, and we decide to isolate to 25. The middle position player calls. The under the gun opponent decides to raise to 135. We decide to fold. He shows pocket queens. Okay, in this next hand, we are picking up the action on the flop. The pre-flop action, the under the gun player, fun player who we want to play pots with, limps for 5. We are in the hijack position and we decide to raise to 20 with 9-8 offsuit. This is definitely outside of our range, but again, we are trying to play pots with this villain. It folds around to the small blind who makes the call, and the under the gun player also makes the call. We're seeing a flop 3 ways. The flop comes out 8-7-3 with 2 clubs. The small blind checks. The under the gun leads out for 30. We decide to call. The small blind also calls. The turn is the jack of diamonds. Both opponents check to us and we decide to make about a pot size bet of 135. The goal of this bet is to fold out any top pair hands that have us out kicked. Queen 9, King 9, Ace 9, 10 9, hands like that. And to set up a big bet on the river if called. We go ahead and bet 135 on the turn with our second pair in gut shot and take it down. The very next hand, as we are still stacking our chips, we pick up pocket aces. We're in middle position and the opponent under the gun decides to limp. Now this is the same opponent that we were involved in the previous hand. He seemed a little bit frustrated and a little tilted. The main reason we decide to also limp along and mix it up is because the villain to our direct left has been isolating limps, and there's also a fun player on the button who has been making very large raise sizes. Unfortunately, the player to our direct left folds, the player on the button calls, the small blind folds, and the big blind checks. So we're seeing a flop here 4 ways, and the flop comes out Ace 9 6 rainbow. The under the gun player decides to lead for 35. We immediately decide to raise it to 145. Under the gun player immediately moves all in. We snap call. He shows us 9-6 offsuit for bottom 2 pair, and we scoop a nice pot. Next hand, we look down at pocket aces for the second time in the session. We're in the cutoff. There is a under the gun open from a old man coffee type to 20. We decide to 3-bet to 75. It folds back around to under the gun who makes the call. The flop comes out 10-6-3 with 1 diamond and 2 hearts. We decide to throw in a C-bet of 85. After some thought, our opponent makes the call. The turn is the 6 of clubs. We decide to bet 135. Our opponent makes a great laydown and folds pocket jacks face up. We show him pocket aces because he had made a comment that we only limp aces from the previous hand that we won earlier. So this next hand, we pick up Queen 9 of hearts in the cutoff. There is a early position limp and the low jack opens to 25. Now this villain played a hand before and he tried to raise his first hand by just throwing in a $25 chip, and the dealer informed him that you have to announce raise. So we suspect this opponent to be fairly new to poker or have very little experience, possibly even his first time playing. So he decides to open to 25 out of the low jack, and we decide to call. The button also calls and the limper calls. So we go four-way, the pot about $100. The flop comes out Jack 10-3 with one heart. It checks to our opponent in the low jack, who bets out 80. With a backdoor flush draw and an overcard plus an open-ended draw, we decide to go ahead and make this call. The other opponents get out of the way, and the turn is the king of clubs. So we turn the second nuts. We only lose to ace queen here, and our villain immediately jams. We don't take much time and we snap call, and the villain shows us pocket fours. So as we suspected, this opponent has very little experience, and again, possibly could just be new to the game. So we go ahead and take this down. Before wrapping up our session, we win a few more small pots. We win with ace 10 on an ace high board. We win with ace jack, and we win with pocket jacks on a king high board and a straddled pot. We end up finishing up on the session close to $3,000. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate the support. Please visit my website, thepokerproneur.com, and follow me on my socials @thepokerproneur. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, guys, embrace the variance in life and in poker.